Hey friends, it's Just the Gems, I'm Brandon. If you're watching this video when it comes out, then suffice it to say, some fairly big things have happened in the United States. I have a feeling that some of my audience might be happy about those things. Some of my audience might not care one way or the other. But some of my audience might be feeling the huge, crushing weight of existential dread and anxiety. If you are feeling that, then first of all, nothing is a replacement for therapy, so talk to a therapist. And if it's particularly extreme and you're entertaining suicidal thoughts, call 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Hotline, please. But look, for the vast majority of folks who are anxious or stressed, you're not feeling it at that level, but you are pretty bummed and upset. I don't talk about serious world issues on this channel, and that's by design. We all need a place to come and unwind away from all the stuff that stresses us out, and I want to be one of those places for you. But if I can offer a small bit of help during a stressful time, I'd love to do that. So I wanted to talk about some JRPGs that, to me, are life-affirming in some way. Games that make me believe in a better tomorrow, or that just help me chill out when I'm worked up. Now, I'm no mental health expert, so please don't view this and think, hey, Brandon's got all the answers. Self-care? Who needs it? Just consider this a hopefully fun way to make some time for yourself and to shake off the anxiety that's weighing you down. So without further ado, here are some anxiety-killing games and why they're meaningful to me. Dragon Quest is a series full of nostalgia for a lot of people. For me, even though it was technically my first JRPG, I didn't really fall in love with it until Dragon Quest XI came out, which caused me to go back and play a lot of the older games I'd missed. I think Dragon Quest XI could work as a balm for anxiety, regardless of whether you're nostalgic or not. Certainly for people who have warm, fuzzy memories of older Dragon Quest titles, you're going to get bum rushed by those classic sound effects and music tracks, and that pretty much always feels great. But if Dragon Quest XI is your first ever Dragon Quest, what's going to draw you in is the beautiful environments and the colorful characters. It's a wonderfully paced story that spaces out its action with some peaceful, slower bits that let you soak in the atmosphere. The charming British voice work is also super relaxing to me, though I guess your mileage may vary on that. I mean, if you're British yourself, then hearing people talk similarly to you probably isn't doing much for you, right? This game isn't what I'd describe as cozy. Most of the games on this list aren't cozy in the traditional sense, really, but it has the right sort of vibe that makes it perfect for unwinding. I think it was Tim Rogers who described Dragon Quest as like being part of a bedtime ritual. I might be remembering that wrong, but I think the gist of it was that it's familiar, it doesn't throw a bunch of high stakes action in your face nonstop, it's easy to just lose yourself in it for periods of time. And when you're in an anxiety spiral, sometimes losing yourself in another world like this can really help break you out of it. Your problems don't go away, but it helps you realize that you're not actually solving your problems by sitting there worrying. That's a lesson I struggled to keep in mind myself, honestly. Blue Reflection and Blue Reflection Second Light are games I've talked about quite a lot on this channel. I've reviewed them both solo and in the case of Second Light with my friend Paige, aka FemTrooper on this website. They're both fantastic examples of vibe-driven video games. What do I mean by that? I just mean that sometimes you don't need edge-of-your-seat action or gripping dialogue to help you get invested in an experience. Sometimes you can get there by taking a moment to be still, listen to some gorgeous music, and watch how the sunlight filters through the window. Moments of self-reflection are absolutely key to pulling yourself out of deep anxiety. Now, there's more to the Blue Reflection games than just the vibes, in Second Light in particular. There's a great story, fantastic characters, really fun combat, but if there's any series out there that invites you to just take a few moments and be in its world, Blue Reflection is that series. I mentioned the music, composed by Hayato Asano, and it is some of the most heartbreakingly beautiful music I've ever heard in a game. He really understood the assignment. He saw this game that was so full of calming vibes, and he said, yes, I can work with that. Spending a few minutes walking up and down the hallway of a high school in the late afternoon, or exploring some of the dreamscapes that make up the dungeons and losing yourself in the atmosphere, it's pure relaxation, pure comfort. It makes that all-important self-reflection easier to do. I highly recommend giving it a try. Admittedly, I haven't played many of the Atelier games, so this recommendation is a combination of my own experience and the trusted advice of some good friends who have played them extensively. For my part, I've only fully played Atelier Rorona, so I'll speak to that experience first. Atelier is a series about anime girls making potions, and that sounds reductive and dismissive, but I assure you it is not. It is straightforwardly insistent that you clear your mind of things like overly complicated plots and wicked machinations of world-devouring villains. In Rorona, you have to prove your atelier is contributing to the community, and so you have to complete a series of tasks by the deadline. Now, generally speaking, games with a deadline are not great to recommend for folks that are dealing with anxiety already. I get that. But the later entries of the series have apparently done away with the deadline gameplay entirely, and honestly, even in Rorona, I never found the deadline stressful. This is a game that gives you a list of things to do and asks you to do them. Sometimes when anxiety rears its ugly head, the best way to combat it is to be productive. If there aren't any compelling ways you can be productive in real life, then why not play a little trick on your brain and be productive in a video game? You get a similar result and you never even had to leave the couch. Like Blue Reflection, these games are from Gust, and they are known for injecting cool, calm vibes into most of what they make. Great music, colorful graphics, fun characters. Atelier feels like the ultimate chill-out series, so if you're caught up in your own head, let yourself unwind a bit and play a game like this. I guess this is the first truly retro title on this list. I was hesitant to put too many retro games on here because I want to be sure I'm not confusing my own nostalgia for a game that's actually helping in combating anxiety. Like, I can sit down and play Final Fantasy IV and be transported back to when I was 8 years old and had not a single care in the world except beating Golbez. But I know from my recent experiment with helping my wife get into JRPGs, link to that video is in the description. But yeah, I learned that that might not be true for everyone. But Secret of Mana holds its own as a calming experience for a few reasons. One, the music. Hiroki Kikuta produced one of the most interesting and unique soundtracks of the 16-bit, or honestly any era. Beautiful melodies and harmonies, strange percussion, it's just a symphony of gorgeous sounds. Another thing I find calming about it is the cooperative gameplay. This was the first JRPG I ever played that was truly multiplayer. Up to 3 people can play together, and bonding with a friend or loved one over a game like this can do wonders for your stress. But even beyond the multiplayer aspect, the game is just so simple and fun. Combat isn't too fast and overwhelming, thanks in large part to the need to charge up before each attack, so you're not button mashing and shutting your brain off entirely. Instead, you're engaged but not overstimulated. I think that's really key to getting yourself into a calm place. You want to be involved in the game, but not stressed out by it. I suppose this may vary a bit from person to person. Not everyone's going to be into action RPGs, but I stand by this as a great way to blow off some steam and unclench a bit. The Trail series is my favorite long-running series of JRPGs, but for the purposes of this video, I'm not necessarily recommending the series as a whole. Instead, thinking in terms of pure anxiety relief, I want to recommend the first entry, or really not even just the first entry, but the first entry in any given arc. See, the series is told over a dozen or so games so far, but there are 4 distinct arcs. The first 3 games make up the Sky arc, the next 2 make up the Crossbell arc, the next 5 make up the Cold Steel arc, and the newest entry, Trails Through Daybreak, begins the Calvert arc. Any first title in a particular arc is doing something pretty different than your typical JRPG. I wouldn't exactly describe them as cozy. You're still fighting enemies and there are still stakes, but each first title does so much wonderful world building and character introductions. You might catch glimpses of a bigger plot boiling underneath it all, but the moment-to-moment of the story can feel deceptively straightforward. In Sky, you're traveling around the country, visiting different cities and helping out where you're needed. In Crossbell, you've just taken a job as a police officer and you're assigned to a strange task force that's supposed to help the citizens with various things. In Cold Steel, you're a new student at a military academy and you have to balance spending time with your friends and traveling around the country on field trips. Each title lays the groundwork for the subsequent entries, but on their own, they don't hit you in the face with the dire stakes of it all. This can actually turn off some potential fans, I know, but from the perspective of anxiety relief, I think this is fantastic. Couple it all with fantastic music and incredibly lovable characters, and you've got a long and meaty experience that will definitely help guide your thinking away from the anxiety spiral. This is truly the coziest of the games on this list, so maybe I don't even have to say all that much about it. It's a farming sim. It's maybe the farming sim, the game that learned all the lessons from the farming games that came before it and improved the formula to the point that all those old farming sims are learning lessons from it. Stardew Valley is a game about routine. You get up in the morning, you do your chores, you head into town, you visit with friends, maybe give a gift to the person you're interested in. You head into the mountains, do a little exploring, gather some materials, and then you go home, go to bed, and get ready to do it all over again the next day. A simple, fulfilling routine can help guide your mind toward calm when you're in the grip of anxiety. Repeating a task and seeing progress being made is extremely rewarding. Our brains are wired to just freaking love that sort of thing. If you want to feed your brain some of those good chemicals, this is one way to get them flowing. Once again, this game has amazing music as well. I'm seeing a theme here. I guess beautiful music is just one of the major things that helps me deal with anxiety, maybe? It's a charming throwback to old school games, but designed for the modern player, and it's become a cultural phenomenon for a reason. Yes, Chrono Trigger is my favorite game, but I think it has a lot to offer the anxiety-riddled mind beyond my own nostalgia for it. What starts out as a simple boy meets girl, boy loses girl to an out-of-control time portal story slowly grows into an era-hopping epic to save the world. But the way you get there never feels like too much. It's an expertly paced game with so much to do and see. You have some of the most iconic characters ever designed by the late Akira Toriyama, and that's saying something considering he created Dragon Ball. You have an out-of-this-world soundtrack by Yasunori Mitsuda coming out of the gate with his first OST by creating some of the most beloved game music of all time. And you have a story and gameplay that are the joint effort of Square's Final Fantasy and Enix's Dragon Quest teams. It's fun, it's not overly difficult, it's not even overly long. It's a fantastic game to spend a little unwinding time with. Its sequel, Chrono Cross, is also in the category of great game to unwind with, though for different reasons. The combat is quite a bit more complicated, meaning you'll have to think a bit harder playing it than Trigger. The graphics were definitely beautiful for the time, but even in its remastered form, it still definitely looks like a PlayStation 1 RPG with all its jagged polygons and static backgrounds. The story isn't paced as expertly as Trigger's, and there are way too many characters. So why do I recommend it as a remedy for anxiety? You probably already know by now. The music. Yasunori Mitsuda came back and dropped one of the most talked about scores for any game ever. The setting for Cross is a tropical archipelago, and the music is just very fitting. There's something therapeutic to me about wandering around the overworld map since there's no random battles, and just listening to the music. It brings me back to my childhood a bit, sure, but at the same time, it's so ethereal and peaceful in ways that I know I never appreciated as a kid. Sometimes you just need to sit in those tropical vibes and let your brain rest a bit. Chrono Cross should be able to get you there. Lunar Silver Star Story Complete is one of those old school games that lands pretty high on my list of favorites because of how unseriously it takes itself. Now, to be clear, I'm talking about the PlayStation 1 game localized by Working Designs. I don't know how the upcoming remaster will be with its due translation. Maybe Lunar has been a dour and serious game all along, and Victor Ireland just managed to trick me all these years. But regardless, playing a game like this that's willing to just goof around is very good. Sometimes when you're stressed, laughing can help, And even if the jokes in Lunar aren't all knee slappers, you might at least get a good groan and an eye roll out of it, which in my experience helps a lot too. JRPGs are in large part about losing yourself in another world. Sometimes those worlds are dark and dire, but sometimes, like in Lunar, they're bright and colorful and weird as heck. I'll admit this one might not be for everyone. It can be a bit on the challenging side because even though it's a 32-bit game, it shows its 16-bit roots with its difficulty at times. But if you don't mind the battles, this is a simple game you can play and just enjoy the ride. Yeah, I'm ending this list with a couple of entries that I'm picking primarily because I find them funny. Believe it or not, humor is a pretty important part of my life. If you've ever cracked a smile at one of the stupid things I've said in one of my videos, maybe that was obvious to you. If you haven't, then look, I'd accept an eye roll too. I'm trying my best out here. But regardless, Earthbound is one of the weirdest, funniest, best games available. It's about kids with psychic powers battling aliens from the future. That alone is a pretty wacky premise, but Earthbound keeps pushing it further with the ridiculous situations you find yourself in. You have to rescue a town being terrorized by zombies by putting down zombie paper, like, fly paper, so that they all get stuck to it. There's a town that's been taken over by a cult that worships the color blue. A guy in a top hat will occasionally fall out of the sky to take your picture. It's goofy as heck. Sure, the combat might have that old school difficulty to it, but that might not even matter to you. It's all about encountering enemies like new age retro hippies and unassuming local guys and territorial oak trees that explode when you beat them. It's super cliche to say that laughter is the best medicine, but something like that becomes a cliche because it's been proven true so many times. If you can break away from your anxious thoughts for a bit and just lose yourself in this farce of a world, it can really work wonders for you. I'd love to know down in the comments what some games you might recommend for this situation. If you're struggling with anxiety, again, I want to encourage you to seek help and only use a list like this as supplementary to getting real care if you're in serious need. But for the rest of you, I hope you enjoyed thinking about these games through this sort of strange lens. If you wouldn't mind liking the video and subscribing if you're not already, I would really appreciate it. The 10,000 subscriber video is coming soon. Sorry for the delay on that. It's been something of a hectic few weeks. But I want to thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, bye.